Hey everybody. Last night I was on the panel at a showing of the movie Fattitude in Tacoma, Washington, and it was a really neat experience. I have to admit that Fattitude, the movie, I highly approve of the concept, but I was dreading watching it a little bit because I had heard that there were some things that were really hard to watch, a lot of diet advertisements and a lot of negative messaging about fat bodies in the media, and that was entirely true. It was a little hard to watch. If I had been sitting on the end of a row, I probably would have gone and maybe had a long bathroom break partway through. As it was, I did sit through the whole thing because I didn't want to bother the people next to me. And oh, you're getting a cat in the background. That's my cat Tansy. She's kind of a jerk, but I love her anyway. She's apparently decided to participate today. But I did watch the whole thing, and it was really amazing. To see folks like Reagan Chastain and Linda Bacon and a lot of other folks that I admire in the body acceptance, fat acceptance, and HAES communities, to see them speak in sort of in this context of body acceptance 101, HAES 101. HAES itself wasn't really a big part of this, but HAES is sort of health at every size is sort of the next step that you might get into after seeing this movie. There wasn't a lot of new information there for me because I've been in the space for a long time, but I absolutely highly recommend that you see it if you get a showing near you. It's absolutely worth the money to go see it. And I was one of 4 panelists afterward, and I was honored to be invited. I always get really nervous when I need to do public speaking of any kind. I'm even nervous sitting here, with this video camera with you. But then once I get into it and I start talking, I'm pretty okay. And it was actually really neat to be. We had one person from the Center for Discovery, one person, actually 2 people with Center for Discovery, me, and then a woman who is in recovery from binge eating disorder and has only known about body acceptance for about 6 months. And so it was really neat to have sort of 2 clinical experts and me, sort of the wild card photographer type, and then somebody who is new in this space, and to get the reactions from somebody who for her, a lot of this was very new material. It was really cool. And I just wanted to add a little bit to that Fattitude experience, and I talked about this a little bit on the panel, but I wanted to sort of share it here as well. You don't need to have seen the movie to understand this, but the movie wrapped up with, I did not catch who the speaker's name was, unfortunately, but a woman of color who had this very rousing, great pep talk about how the visibility of fat people in the world is part of what's necessary for acceptance and accommodation. So it was this very rousing pep talk about fat people we need to get into the world, and we need to be willing to be seen, and we need to advocate for ourselves with healthcare and advocate for ourselves with on public transit and with seating in restaurants, and the more visible we are, the more the world will get used to us and accommodate us. And for me, this is a yes and. Yes, that is absolutely true. And, well, I guess there's a but here too. So I'm going to go through the but first. Yes, but we also have to be aware that there are real risks and consequences to public visibility in a fat body. And I suspect that the speaker included some of that, and it didn't make it into the movie because it was a pretty jam-packed 90 minutes. But it's so important to recognize when we ask people in fat and other marginalized bodies to be visible that we recognize the risks that go along with that. If I take public transit instead of taking my car to work, just as a random example, I am opening myself up to public abuse. I'm opening myself up to catcalls, to public insults, to people because they had to sit beside me on the bus, to people refusing to let me have a seat because I'm fat, to people yelling insults, to sexual harassment, to sexual harassment because I'm fat. Because let me tell you about some of the Instagram creeps I get. Holy crap. There are plenty of people out there who feel free to creep on fat women because that's their thing, and because fat women aren't given any respect in the public discourse, so they feel even more free to do it than they might a more a more conventionally attractive person. So I think we really have to acknowledge the risks there. And for any, if you go into a theater and buy a seat and it turns out it doesn't fit, and you ask for an accommodation there on the spot, it may turn out wonderfully, and you may have a person or a company that leaps to accommodate you and then starts taking that into account in the future. Or you may just have somebody who insults you and leaves you standing there in the theater and you've lost that money because you can't physically fit in the seat and they're not willing to accommodate. You never know which way it's going to go. And so I think when we cheerlead, be visible in public, go stand on the beach in a bikini and go run through the water and go to the pool in that bikini and, demand the accommodations you deserve in public. I think that's fantastic. And I also think we need to acknowledge the risks that we're asking folks to take. Particularly, again, the more marginalized your body, the larger or the darker your skin. I live in a white body. I'm a cisgender woman. I have a lot of privilege, even though I have a large body. I'm more likely to be accommodated in those circumstances than somebody who's more marginalized. So I think we need to be aware of that. But I also, I talked about this on the panel pretty extensively last night. I want to turn that back around to people who live in smaller bodies, thinner bodies, and say that it's great for us to be, those of us who live in larger bodies, to be aware that to change the culture, we need to be present in public. But I think it's even more important to have thin allies backing us up. Even more important than us being visible is people backing us up when we are willing to be visible. Because say I get on that bus and somebody is flipping out at me in public and insulting me because I'm fat and I'm daring to ride public transit. I need a thin person who's going to back me up. Because what I was telling the audience last night is that the more thin privilege that you have, the smaller a body that you live in, the more likely you are to be taken seriously. So when I talk about how diets don't work, and we know that scientifically, somebody who is not receptive to that is going to automatically discount me because I live in a large body. And so they're going to think, oh, well, she just wants an excuse. She just wants an excuse to not exercise and to eat junk food all day, every day. And because clearly all she eats is donuts all the time. So I am just less likely statistically to be taken seriously than someone who is in a thin body. And so it's great for us to be visible. But even more so, I do wish that the movie had expanded that into talking to about half of this particular showing was people in smaller bodies in the audience. And we moved down the hall to the panel discussion afterward. And at that point, it was about 3/4 larger bodies and 1/4 small bodies. It was also late. It's a work night. People needed to go home. But I did find it interesting that the demographics sort of changed once it became an additional commitment to discussion afterward. But about half that theater was full of thin folks. And I do wish that the movie had extended that into, when you live in a thinner body, here is what you need to be doing as an ally to help out, because you're just automatically more likely to be taken seriously. And I just think that's so important that I really want people to be keeping that in mind, because it's not just on me to be visible in public. It's on you, person in a smaller body, to back me up. And maybe the next time you go to a restaurant, look at the accommodations. Are they all booths? Are they all tiny little aisles where even somebody who's in a thinner body like you has trouble fitting through? Ask for that accommodation. It doesn't have to be about you for you to ask for it. You can go to that restaurant manager and you can say, hey, I've noticed that these chairs are all really tiny and sharp and high off the ground. They're all the fancy bar stools. That's going to be really difficult for somebody who's larger than I am or who has any kind of physical disability to deal with. Or I've noticed that it's really, really loud in here. Somebody who gets overstimulated may have a really hard time with this. Can you change it? What can you do to fix this? You don't have to have a fat person with you. You don't have to have a person with a disability with you. You can advocate without, it doesn't have to be like a night situation where you're rushing in to rescue me at the bus stop because somebody's being a jerk to me. That's great. But you don't have to, a fat or marginalized person doesn't have to be present for you to do the right thing and to advocate for us. So the next time you're out somewhere, keep that in mind.